All vehicles are wonderful when they're brand new and they have warranty. You're protected from new technology, high-powered drivetrains that could fail at any moment. Each and every component within every one of these vehicles is actually designed for a specific lifespan. That's right. Once 3 to 4 years runs out, warranty's gone and most of these parts start to fail. So if you want to avoid stress, anguish, wallet emptying technology like these vehicles have, then I'm going to share a list of 10 of the worst vehicles that you want to dump way before the warranty period if you know what's good for you. Let's get into it now.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
The first vehicle I wouldn't touch with a 20-foot pole is this product. It's an all-wheel drive vehicle. This is a Ford Escape, as we see here, and you can tell the rounded off design. This is the newest, latest, and greatest. Comes in different engine configurations. Well, some people like, you get a sunroof, you get beautiful wheels, and it's actually coming up to be almost somewhat luxurious. You get the beautiful LED headlights and, of course, a front grille that looks very European. But the unfortunate part is the 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine, either the plug-in hybrid, the PHEV, have a prevalence. There's actually a recall for potential catastrophic engine failure, which results in oil, fuel vapors wafting under the engine compartment in here, and then it does unfortunately end up being a huge potential for a catastrophic fire or roadside burn. And we know that a lot of these Fords have had some struggles in the Escapes for some time. The smaller EcoBoost engines have also, even before this, the previous generation, have had issues with turbochargers failing, or engines that end up blowing head gaskets and the coolant weeps into the combustion chamber. And as a result, the FORD, found on road dead, is a true acronym, and in my opinion, that's usually the way it lands. Now, Ford had some decent engines. The earlier generation of the older model like this that had the naturally aspirated 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine was actually marginally reliable because it was an older carryover drivetrain. It's when they started introducing the EcoBoost direct injection to these vehicles, they now had problems. They've also had some transmission issues as well as some basic electrical gremlins, enough to stop this vehicle from operating properly. They also don't ride particularly well, and I found with people that have owned these 3 or 4 or 5 years and put some miles on them, the suspension starts getting clunky and you start getting banging noises in the back here. And this is a true deal. I know people that have these, and all of a sudden it started developing weird noises with relatively low miles, 50, 60,000 miles, and all of a sudden it's starting to make some odd sounds. Very fragile, very poorly built, in my personal opinion, and definitely one you're going to want to avoid and get rid of way before warranty. Another one right here is the next one in line of vehicles I wouldn't hold way beyond warranty. As a matter of fact, I'd probably toss this way before the warranty expires, because these are not known for long lifespans. Now, while Subaru brand does have some vehicles that can last a long time, this particular model is not one of them. Here we have the Subaru. Of course, they're all-wheel drive, and of course there's a logo, but this is the STI, and this one here essentially is the hotted up version of the WRX. And yes, the STI, it's the kind of model that if somebody says, what do you got? And I say, I got an STI? Doesn't that sound kind of hokey? Doesn't it sound like some sort of a disease? So just for that reason alone, I wouldn't want to buy one of these vehicles. But it's not just the name. And if you want a vehicle that does represent the off-road rallying, because that's ultimately where it came from, and this is definitely the rally colors, I understand why people want them. They're classic, they're hotted, and a lot of the young drivers love these because they're not extremely expensive. You can also get them with a manual gearbox, and of course they just sound unique. They have that flat 4-cylinder engine. This is a 2.5-liter, and people love the way these drive. The all-wheel drive, it just seems like an easy vehicle to justify. But unfortunately, a lot of these vehicles have been known to blow engines way before 60,000 miles. Some say they can go over 200,000 miles, but that's after you've rebuilt the heads a couple of times, you've done some other major engine work. Usually these ones generally don't last all that long. Ringland issues, blown engines, turbos, wastegates, oxygen sensors under the hood, and everything from blown head gaskets to popped holes in pistons simply means it's not a vehicle that you want to hold on to beyond warranty. Parts start to get expensive. It's not going to cost you the same kind of money as a Range Rover. The fact remains is the price point of this vehicle new represents and suggests that it should be an affordable car to own and operate for years, like a Honda Civic, like a Toyota Corolla. But unfortunately it's not. And here's a brand new that we're all too familiar with engine catastrophic failures. And we're looking at another Hyundai here. Of course, this is a newer model. It was very hard to come by. Everybody wanted to get this because it's a larger SUV that would accommodate large families, friends, and all those little people in your family that you just like to haul around everywhere you go. And here we have, of course, a very awkward looking front end. Very looks much like the Mitsubishi style there. You get alloy wheels, of course, nice detailing. And look, I love the mirrors though. You do get this nice brushed aluminum and you get glass on top. which just seems to go and go and go. And then at the back, you have this beautiful back end. This is a large SUV. As you see, we're talking about the Palisade right here, and it's an H-track. Not to be confused with the 8-track tape, although the technology in this vehicle to me feels like it's as dated as an 8-track tape. Okay, maybe a cassette player. I don't know. Anyway, there we go. We have big, beautiful chrome on the back here. And of course, look, crapped out exhaust tips already. This is a new vehicle and it looks already quite corroded. But there's some big issues with this one. One of which, of course, is the blind spot monitoring back here. Sometimes it's faulty. All these sensors that they plug in everywhere, cameras, more sensors, are there to design and protect you in the case of backing out, in case of anybody's coming. Same thing on the front end. There's more protection there to watch out for pedestrian warning, but they don't always seem to work. Other issues are inadvertently cracking of the windshield seems particularly fragile, and wind noise in the cabin causes a lot of heartache for a lot of owners when they start getting up to highway speeds and start hearing whistling and humming noises inside the cabin. It seems to be a real pain. But the big issue is what's under the hood here. Yes, over 4,000 units were recalled under NHTSA for potential broken valve springs. That's right, the valve springs which operate the valves which allow fuel and air in and exhaust out. Those springs are loaded tension and they're known to fatigue. Based on supply chain challenges, they've got some problems in some of those springs. And now while Hyundai is saying that only affects 1% of the engines, that's 1% too many. Why do we have any vehicles that have faulty valve springs? And here we go again, Hyundai and bad blown engines. And here's the next one I wouldn't recommend to some of my worst enemies, and we're looking at the Bronco by Ford, but this is the Bronco Sport. That's right, this is the smaller Bronco, not to be mistaken for the full size that rocks the twin turbo V6 engines. This one actually has the smaller 4-cylinder engines associated with it. Very much the same engines and drivetrains you'll find in a lot of the Escapes. The Broncos is having some issues. There's a big problem right now, and a recall specifically for potentially dumping gas on the ground under there. Yes, you could actually leak a bunch of fuel from under the engine through a cracked fuel injector. That's right, there's a big recall right now for a lot of these vehicles with cracked fuel injectors, and then they actually came up with a quick knee-jerk fix. Oh, we'll put a little trough in there and we'll let the fuel drain down onto the ground, and then we'll put in some patch code logic into the software to say that, oh, if it detects a drop in pressure. Well, I'm here to ask, how much pressure do you need to see loss? And how quick? And what's the rapid rate of loss of pressure? And all these other factors. And then what was the resolution to actually shut the car off? Could you imagine it cracks an injector in extreme heat, you're driving down the freeway, and all of a sudden the vehicle shuts off because it detects a leak? That doesn't sound like a very smart idea, now does it? Well, NHTSA didn't like it either. And so they came after Ford found on road dead and decided to push and lean on them to come up with a more permanent solution for this cracked injector issue. But it's just on top of the other problems that you're finding with a lot of these EcoBoost engines. These Turbo 4s that burn in oil, blowing head gaskets, and the transmissions aren't that well done either. Remember, anytime you're building a vehicle that's the small version of something bigger, it's usually scaled down in quality, parts, fit and finish. And this one, with these cheap little vents and base looking mirrors and 70s motif wheels and a very barn door looking rear end on this vehicle, on this Bronco Sport, is already showing that there's far too many issues to risk your hard-earned dollars and keep this outside of warranty. So if you really feel you need to have one, get it out of your system and then get it gone before 3 years up. Here's the next heap draped in white that we see right here. Now, generally what we're looking clearly is a Buick, and usually Buick implies that it's a luxury brand, but because this vehicle is so down-spec, downgrade, and base model, it is basically a Chevy Trax with a different set of skins on it. It's really not a luxury vehicle per se, so I'm gonna slide this one in here. And we have this beautiful new revised taillight, and then you have the 3 shields right here, which means you should probably have the hand of God or somebody looking out for you every time you're driving this vehicle, because it's not only, in my opinion, not safe, it's also not reliable. This is the Encore GX, and it does come with all-wheel drive. You do get some nice little finishing detail like this on the splitter down here. Some cutesy little lines. I love these handles with the two-tone, I'm not gonna lie. As well as you do get a little sunroof on there, and this high gloss piano finishing right there as well. It means they're trying to slap a little lipstick on that pig, but it's still a pig. So ultimately we have a vehicle here that's trying to appeal to the young buyer. They go and put all this little red detailing in here, this fresh, fun, feisty, sporty looking front end. but it's really not a well-made vehicle. I know somebody who owns one of these personally. They've had lots of issues, drivability, surging. It hasn't driven very well right from get-go. Had to take it into the dealer for a few times. They did some tuning to it apparently from the factory. It improved it a little bit. It's still not a great vehicle, grossly underpowered. Transmissions are a huge potential failure in a lot of these vehicles. And even Buddy's saying his is starting to slip and act a little weird, or picks up and it's a little sudden. Electronics seem to be an issue with some of these vehicles. There's also been problems with seat belts not retracting properly, or the airbags being a problem as well. And because clearly we have an issue with electrics, engines, transmissions, safety features, seat belts, and the like, just means it's too much risk. And if you really need to get into one to drive for a couple of years for work and then you think you might get rid of it, that's what I would suggest. Or don't buy it at all, because it's going to cost you an arm and a leg, and it's just basically money wasted. So the next one actually pains me to say this, because the Toyota Lexus brand is one of the most reliable brands on the planet today. And I did a video a few weeks back, so I'm sort of eating my words, and sort of don't take it to me too hard. But we're looking at the latest and greatest Toyota Tundra. Now, it's not a truck, I get it, but what we're starting to see is the evolution within the entire lineup. This extremely reliable 5.7 liter V8 under the hood. Of course, these vehicles, you do get all the chrome and extra bling. These trucks are large and in charge, essentially equivalent to a half-ton or thereabouts. You get all kinds of great technology in terms of comfort in these vehicles. It's a very beefy looking unit. You can tow some weight in your trailer and your boat with this thing. And you even get some nice chrome detail here, large door. These vehicles are absolutely gorgeous. You get some nice finishing inside there. I mean, look inside, you get this beautiful interior detailing. Toyota really stepped up their game. This is 1794 edition Tundra. But the problem isn't this one, it's the newest version. And it's a lot of the Toyotas. Now they're going with a turbo 4-cylinder, turbo 6-cylinder. And now instead of this 5.7 that's been proven over many years, they now went to this 3.4 liter twin turbo V6. Now, unfortunately, we're starting to see huge issues with that new engine. And so if there's one vehicle I would strongly stay away from, at least till they get the issues sorted out, is the latest Tundra that carries that new 3.4 liter twin turbo V6. And that, unfortunately, the engine carries in other models. The GX 550, like we're looking at right here, these are beautiful, and I really wanted to love this vehicle. I was even considering maybe buying one because I love the style. It looks very much like a Defender or Land Rover, but unfortunately there's a problem under that hood, and it's that 3.4 liter V6. So while the Tundra, and we know the Toyota Sequoia, all those larger vehicles are going to use that 3.4. Now also, they were allegedly getting metal filings throughout the engine as they weren't properly cleansed after the machining process, and all of that metallics wound up in the main bearings that holds and houses the crankshaft. The crankshaft's the reciprocating mass that actually drives the base of the engine. Without that aligned, you're toast. And unfortunately, yes, they're taking out engine upon engine upon engine. It's a big issue. Toyota understands what the issue is now, but it took them some time to figure it out. Here we are. Now they're trying to do the customers right. But the unfortunate part is a lot of the other engines, the 2.4 Turbo 4 now, are swapping out anything that resembled the 350 from before. You know, you think about even the Toyotas, the Camrys that carried a V6. Now you're looking at turbocharged 4-cylinder engines, replacing all of their old school ultra reliable drivetrains. So unfortunately, the Toyota Tundra is one you're going to have to avoid like the plague, and if you need to have it, get rid of it before the warranty. Word of caution, dealers don't want to take them for trade right now because they can't do anything with them. Until the recall is properly fixed, it's been validated, these vehicles are just going to sit in a lot, and according to laws, they're not even allowed to resell that vehicle until it's been properly fixed. You might send it to an auction to some unsuspecting sucker who doesn't know any better, but at the end of the day, that's just pure shady, so I would probably avoid it altogether. Another one I wouldn't have bought neither brand new is the little Nissan Murano. A lot of these, we know Nissan struggled a lot with electrical problems as well as transmission issues, but there's actually a lot more, and there's a lot more beneath the skin that you don't often know about or you don't hear about. But let's break this down. One thing, engine mounts. Problem, you throttle it and the engine mounts clunk, 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 because when you hit the gas, you hear this clunking noise in the front end. Often that's just the motor mounts and they're just sloppy, just given away. Brakes, premature hanging up and making excessive noises as well. Fuel system problems throughout, leaks, as well as evap systems we know are very, very likely in a lot of these Nissan products. Steering and suspension related issues. As I mentioned, lots of clunking and banging from the front end as well as the back end as well, and you can get clunking noises as well as steering issues, and the vehicle just generally is a little bit vague in the steering department. HVAC, the climate control system, stops puking out the cold air. Electrical gremlins, lighting issues, power window issues, power sunroof issues. Exhaust premature rusting and just making strange noises. Evap clogs, I already mentioned, gas spills, and as well, when you're going to fill the vehicle up, it might puke gas out, or it just doesn't allow you to fill it because there's a clog in the system. Occupancy warning system, which isn't uncommon. I've heard of these on a lot of Audi products too, where it tells you that there's somebody there when there's not, or vice versa. And the airbags have been an issue with some of these vehicles. The visor as well, keeps dropping down on a lot of vehicles. Paint and trim related issues, and you'll get excessive peeling, and a lot of times this fake chrome starts to peel away too. General noises throughout the vehicle, as well as leaks all the way around. Every door and hatch has a potential to leak, and a bigger potential than most other vehicles. And we also know one of the biggest issues with a lot of modern day Nissan products are their CVT, the continuously variable transmission, which starts to build heat, prematurely deteriorate, and of course either needs expensive maintenance or extremely expensive replacement, $3,000–4,000 for a new system in there. And lots of people talk about ticking noises from the engine, tick, 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 tick. A lot of times you've got tensioner related issues, timing chain, ramps, and catastrophic engine failures, where this timing system goes out of whack, and of course now you have piston and valve connection. All in all, there are some great engines and drivetrains in some Nissan products, but a lot of these vehicles here in the Muranos are not particularly well made. They're a volume number, there's lots of them out there, but at the end of the day, there's way too many nickel and dime issues, and I could never in my right mind recommend anybody go and buy one of these Nissan Muranos. Or if you do, dump it before the warranty's gone. Another fine feathered friend from our Das Auto group called VAG and Volkswagen right there is what we have. This is the little SUV. Here's the big tank. We'll get to that. That's another day. But right here we have the slightly smaller one. Now, I know people who own these. They're great people and they trust in the brand as it was 20 years ago. Unfortunately, these new Volkswagens have become far too complex, as many of the parts and design and engineering is following suit with a lot of the VAG products, for example, from Porsche and Audi, which are way too complicated for their own good. But here we have obviously flip away mirrors, little handles that allow you to punch your way in. Of course, sunroof on top. I love the chrome top on here as well, and a pretty standard looking SUV of sorts. Volkswagen's always kept them kind of conservative when comparing. They don't want to outdo their big brother Audi, for example, so they keep things a little bit understated. And of course, as such, we look at an understated SUV. Volkswagen right there, and it's a Tiguan. I can't help but wonder if they were trying to go for Tiger or something. Tiger, and then realize, well, it's the last thing from a tiger, so Tiguan. I don't know. You guys tell me in the comment section. But here we have a flip-up camera here. It's what's inside that counts. And there's so much complexity in these vehicles that it's enough to choke a horse. And sadly, let me give you a rundown why. These are great to own brand new because they have all the technology. They're nice, they're German, they feel solid like a tank, but you don't want to own them outside of warranty because there's a whole host of issues. For example, engine stalling for some cases due to the electronic power control module, the EPC, the warning light comes up. And it's usually related to some problem in the fuel injecting harness. And when that fails, it just checks out a check engine light. And of course, usually you get limp mode and the vehicle doesn't go very far, very fast. Another very worrying issue that a lot of these vehicles are having are hesitation and accelerating. Could you imagine trying to merge onto a freeway and get out of a big semi's way and all of a sudden your vehicle just doesn't, it's just bog, and it doesn't go? Could be the MAF, the mass airflow sensor, sometimes the fuel pump, which pumps the fuel to the system, throttle position sensor, that's a common failure point, as well as failing, leaking down injectors, all common problems with some of these vehicles. Timing chain issues as well from 2009 to 2013. Now we're talking about older ones, so it's less of a problem if you're buying a new one like this, but catastrophic timing chain issues have been noted for a lot of these engines, as well as the failed clock spring. Here in the steering wheel, you know the steering wheel right there? You're driving down the road, there's a steering wheel right here. Inside that, behind that hub of the steering wheel, there's actually a clock spring. It remembers where the connections are so that it maintains continuity for the horn, some of the accessories, specifically even airbag. And between 2011 and 2019, there was a lot of issues with that clock spring breaking, failing, becoming dislodged, and then you lose all of those abilities on your steering wheel, including the airbag. And a lot of these dumpster fire engines you're getting from the Volkswagen VAG group, including Audi, features that 2.0 TFSI or that direct injected engine, and you wind up with mass amounts of carbon fouling. That's right, the intake manifold, the valves, everything gets carboned up because of that direct injection, and it doesn't allow the backsides of those intake valves to wash away, as well as heavy oil consumption, a very common issue with some of the 2-liter engines, and the Tiguan is no different. It just gets me to no end when people walk up and they say, oh yeah, I had to put another cord in. I said, well, how many kilometers do you have between oil changes? Well, I just did an oil change 2.5 weeks ago, and to put another cord in. That's a common consensus for a lot of people that own a lot of these vehicles. And sadly, with all that extra carbon and oil burning, it's reducing its capacity to internally combust within the engine, rough idling because you have maybe different high spots, low spots, black smoke from the exhaust. You can get lots of that. It's a big issue. Misfires, of course, if you're getting carbon fouling, it gets on the plugs and of course they don't fire properly, as well as decreased acceleration or overall performance are all some major issues and reasons why these vehicles fail. And honestly, great vehicles when they're new, as I say, most of these vehicles are wonderful when they're new and even for the first year, maybe 2 years. But caution, word to the wise. If you're gonna buy this vehicle, I would be sure to dump it to the curb way before 3 years is up. Another one here that's losing popularity at an alarming rate is the latest and greatest Grand Caravan. And this is a Chrysler product, as we can see here. And while a lot of people consider these very versatile, useful family haulers, the fact remains is it does only get about a 3.5 out of 5 star from Repair Pal, and that's solely because of reliability issues. Basic interior that makes you feel like you're sitting in a barrel of monkeys. Yeah, it's not a particularly great looking unit, very generic, very vanilla yogurt. Let's take this right from the top. People already are talking all over the net, doing a lot of research, problems with brakes like that. Again, spongy, they don't hold up all that well over a period of time, and they wear out very aggressively. It's a big, heavy vehicle, and the brakes are a little bit undersized for that. Drivetrain problems, we know, no shortage of issues with a lot of the engines and transmissions, steering issues with these vehicles, faulty TIPM, and that's a totally integrated power module that's known to fail in a lot of Jeep, Chrysler, Dodge products. Yeah, that controls all your inputs, your lights, your windows, all the other electrics on the vehicle, even including, unfortunately, the fuel pump, which runs the vehicle itself. And the TIPM, when it fails, it basically just goes blank, or it starts glitching out and different things work or they don't work. And it's a several $1,000 repair if you're gonna do it at the dealer. Sure, there's thrifty people all over the internet that'll tell you, oh, it's an easy, quick and swap. But at the end of the day, not everybody is a DIYer, and it's the type of repair that's a pain in the rump, and it costs you thousands of dollars to fix. Fuel related problems with these, as well as you can get oil leaks underneath in that engine as well. Not uncommon for this thing to puke out oil from all sorts of different seals. Stuck in park, yeah, you can't get it into gear, that's a problem. Transmissions, to move this thing down the road, transversely mounted engine, this transmission is a weak point and always has been for many of these Caravans, Plymouth Voyagers, and all of these types of vehicles. Valve stem corrosion leads, of course, to premature valve guide wear, and of course, hence, you'll see smoke blowing out the backside. Power window motor issues, again, sometimes related to the TIPM. Noise in the front suspension, and these front ends are often very fragile. I personally know several people that have these types of vehicles, and it just gets clunky and bangy, and the whole front end just starts banging around and feels loose, and the whole car just feels like it's coming unglued right under your very hands in the control of that steering. So it's a poorly built vehicle. There's a certain price point. Some people feel like that's the only option, but honestly, maybe look at some of the other options from Toyota and Honda. You're going to get a far better vehicle for marginally more money. It's going to way outlast these vehicles, and you'll have so many issues with these likely that it's going to be a pain. So honestly, if you need to own these outside of warranty, don't bother, because these are the rental car specials, and that's why you see them on the rental car fleet yards. And here's the next one here that's in line that you're definitely going to want to keep only for a couple of years. Get rid of it way before the warranty period's up. And why is that? Well, there's warranty on the drive, but then there's another 8 years on the batteries, and the batteries can last a significant amount of time. But the problem is, every one of these vehicles, other than the quality control issues, they talk about panel gap troubles, they talk about technology issues. And while this is the latest and greatest Tesla Model 3, of course, these handles here have been known to jam up, so these mirrors, and of course, even all the added tech in there are enough to choke a horse. And a lot of these vehicles are loaded full of technology, and that center screen in there is the source of a lot of problems. We had rented one a couple of years ago, and actually that center screen died. We could get into the car, but the car would not start. Of course, there's so many sensors here and sensors there and sensors here and sensors everywhere. These vehicles are very popular for the first couple of years, but where most internal combustion vehicles start to slow down their depreciation rate after 3 or 4 years, these things start to continue accelerating, and you literally lose 30 to 40% year over year, year on year, as these vehicles age. Obviously, because the batteries get older, people start getting nervous, and after 4 or 5 years, you know the battery lifespan is likely close to being done, or at least halfway there. And it doesn't give buyers a real lot of confidence in buying one of these vehicles, knowing full well that the batteries are a big part of the longevity of these vehicles. Not to mention they're a rolling PC on wheels, and as a result, you're going to have constant upgrades of technology, which you don't have today. You might have something new tomorrow. The year after might be something bigger again. And that's why these vehicles depreciate so hard, and there's very few people that actually know how to properly fix these vehicles, and as a result, most owners are held hostage to the technology. And with all of that said, right there, you want to check out some of the worst luxury vehicles you definitely want to dump away before warranty, because they also will break the bank. Hope to see each and every one of you all on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.